Tzur Chutzavtim. We're on the top now of Samathalidom in Beis, B'siyata D'Shmaya, V'el Makeves Bar Nukartem. Uksiv, the next pasuk says, Habitu al Avram Avichem Vel Sorat Cholelchem. And the second pasuk is going to shed a light on the previous pasuk to teach us that when it says Tzur, Shemimenu Chotzavtem, Chotzavtem means you were formed from this stone. It was like hewing a stone. That's a reference to Avram. And when it says Makeves Bar, Shemimenu Nukartem, that's an allusion to Sarah. And then afterwards it says Asher Tcholalchem, and it means Asher Yolda Lachem, Yolda Eschem. So anyway, the pasuk seems to clearly indicate that we have to make that tzur and that makeves bar into something that's capable of giving birth, of having children, because they were akurim. Omer Rab Nachman, Omer Rabba Baravua, Sarah imenu islandis hoisa. Sarah did not have the capacity to bear children. Shenemar v'tihi Sarah kara, ein la volad. And this Gemara that we're about to learn is very famous in the name of Rabbeinu Bachai, in order to indicate what a great miracle it was that Sarah gave birth to Yitzchak. The Gemara says that v'tihi Sarah yakar is enough. We would know that ein la vlad, that she has no children. So why did the Torah add these three words, ein la vlad? Afilu beis vlad ein la. She did not have a uterus that would carry a baby. Rabbi Yehuda B'rei Rab Shmuel Bar Shilat. Mishmei Derav, right? Shilat is Shavisi Hashem L'negdi Somi. Lo Shanu, when do we say that a person's allowed to postpone marrying a second wife for 10 years? Ella B'doros Harishonim Sheshnoseyem Merubos. It means they would live to an older age, and therefore, even if he wouldn't immediately divorce her, he could wait 10 years and he would still be a young person relatively, and he could get married then and have children. In our generations, when the average age, the average years of a person's life, just the same muatos, people don't live that long. Longevity has been cut down, so to speak. And if he waits 10 years, he might not live to marry another woman and have children. He can postpone marriage to a second wife for 2.5 years. Fusepis, where do we get the number 2.5 years? Keneged shlosha iburim. So that a pregnancy is 9 months. And if you multiply 9 times 3, you get 27, which is equal to 2.5 years, right? 12 and 12 is 24, and another 6. Just 1 second. 12 and 12 is 24, and another 6, 30. Just 1 second. We need an extra month until she can become pregnant. Correct? So it's 10, 10, and 10. That's Shlosha Iburim. Do you follow? We're adding not just the time of, from conception to birth, but also the month that it takes until she conceives. Right. So it's 999, and you add 111, and you get 30.
30, yeah.
So that's going to be the equivalent of 2.5 years. Now he adds a point over here, and he says the following. Lefisha isha misaberes rak somach levesta. Right before her vestas, when she expects to see, the cycle, when she expects dam, that's when she gets pregnant. That's when the ovum is ready for impregnation. So therefore, if at that point is tzricha lavar esimei atuma v'atara v'achach misaberes. So we need that extra month because that's going to be Samach Levesta, right? She has a Vestas of 30 days. Rabba Omer of Nachman, he holds that it's not 2.5 years in these generations, but rather Shalosh Shana, 3 full years. Keneged Shalosh Pkidos, that a person has to pass 3 Rosh Hashanahs, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu remembers the Akaros and accepts their tefillos and decrees that they can become pregnant on Rosh Hashanah. The Omer Mab Rosh Hashanah Nifkedu Sarah, Rachel, V'Chana. So therefore, we want to wait 3 Rosh Hashanahs to see that perhaps, if not on the first Rosh Hashanah, if not the second, then by the 3rd Rosh Hashanah, Hashem will change the Gzera, and this woman will be able to give birth. If 3 Rosh Hashanahs pass, that's 3 years, and yet she's not capable of having children, she hasn't given birth, then it's time to divorce her. Omar Rabba, lesnu lahani kloli. I don't accept any of these rules that the shear of 10 years has changed in the later generations. We're gonna continue the original halacha as it were in the earlier generations of postponing divorce for 10 years. Why? Michti, let's look. Masnisin, our Mishnah says that you're allowed to wait 10 years. Man Takin, Rebbe, who organized the Mishnais, who was Rebbe. V'ha, and already at the time of David HaMelech, way before Rebbe, we made David, Imatu Shnei B'nei Adam, right? The years of man became shorter. As David HaMelech tells us in Tehillim, in chapter 90, he says, Yemeshno Shnei Seinu B'hem Shivim Shana. So already at the time of David, he was testifying that the average lifespan would be 70 years. And yet, Rebbe in the Mishnah paskins that you could wait 10 years. So you see that the law did not change, even though Shnosov Shal Adam became shorter and shorter. Now the Mishnah says that after 10 years he has to divorce his wife. And the Bryce explains that perhaps he was the Gorem for the fact that they didn't have children, and therefore he's obligated to pay the ksuba. He can't blame it on her. So she was not necessarily the cause of divorce. So the Gemara asks for Hai Shemalo Zachali Banos Hemeno. Why do we assume that maybe he was the one who caused them that they couldn't have children? Dilma, perhaps Ihi, the Lo Zachya, maybe it was her, and she was the one who wasn't Zocha. So therefore, why should we obligate him to pay the ksuba? It's a suffix. We don't know who is the cause. So Gemara answers, Ihi, she came on the lo mifkada period lo miansha. The fact that they didn't have children is a punishment. Who is guilty? It's obviously him, because he's the one who's obligated in the mitzvah period, but she's not obligated in the mitzvah, so she wouldn't be punished in that way of not being able to have children, because she's not even obligated to have children. As if to say she doesn't care one way or the other. She doesn't have to get uptight about it. And we know that that's not true. Today, women are so uptight about it that they'll have their own, they'll see, they'll take sperm from a bank and impregnate themselves in order to have children. Not everyone is in favor of that, but yesh dorshim l'gnai, yesh dorshim l'shvach. So Gemara asks, Eini, do you assume that if he wasn't Zocha to have children from the first wife, he might be Zocha from the second wife, and therefore we tell him after 10 years to divorce his first wife, which is interesting because he was punished for his sin that he was denied the ability to fulfill his mitzvah period of Rivya, and now we're going to tell him to marry a second wife. Why is the situation going to get any better? Apparently, Rabbi Abba did not have children. get married and have children. Omer Lahu. And Rabbi Abba responded, I'm not going to marry a woman. Why? Because Izakoi, if I was Zakoi, meaning I was worthy of having children, I would have had children from my first wife. So why do you assume anything's going to change when I marry a second wife? So therefore, this whole underlying reasoning that after 10 years he should divorce his wife so he marries a second wife, l'chor, it's against the statement of Rabbi Abba. And the answer is Hassam. What was the response of Rabbi Abba to the Chachamim? It was not a true response. And you can't bring any proof from it. This is his way of sort of pushing off the Rabbanon who are pressuring him. But rather, the reason why Rabbi Abba, did not marry a second wife is the Rabbi Abba bar Zavda Iaker me Pirkei de Rav Huna. What does this mean? That, if I understand correctly, there were biological reasons why Rabbi Abba could not have children. And that is because he attended regularly the shiurim of Rav Huna. Rav Huna gave a long shir. It's like in the Rav shir, we take turns going out to the washroom, so it shouldn't look bald. So apparently he didn't have that option, so he would hold in his urine so that he wouldn't leave in the middle of the shir, and he became an akar. And if it's biological, then there's no reason, says Rabbi Abba, that I should marry a second wife. What's going to change? I have a biological disease, an injury, so to speak. Rav Gidol Yaker mi Pirkei de Rav Huna, Rabbi Chelbo Yaker mi Pirkei de Rav Huna, Rav Sheshas Yaker mi Pirkei de Rav Huna. Well, long list of Talmidim of Rav Huna. Rav Acha bar Yaakov, as a result of the fact that he held himself back from urinating during the shir of Rav Huna, Achtate Suskinosa, he was stricken with a disease which is caused by Atziras Mei Raglayan, which eventually leads to a person being an akar. Talyua bi arza de beirav. They placed him sort of hanging from a piece of a cedar tree. I guess there was some sort of a cedar post in the Beis Medrash. V'nafak minei, and somehow that cured him, and the choli just ran away. Kehutza yarka. I think the Gemara is saying that because he held back his urine, the countenance of his face turned green, like a palm tree, like, a date tree. So the palms of the date tree are green. Now, I'm not sure if the green countenance indicated how sick he was, or this is when the choli was leaving his body as a Omer Rav Acha bar Yaakov Shitin Savei Avina. There was 60 Talmidei Chachamim, v'kulu Yaker mi Pirkei Rav Huna. So the total number, if you take a roll call, of those who became barren because they held back their urine because of the teachings of Rav Huna that were marith, it's 60. Lebar Mani, besides myself, Rav Acha is saying about himself that he would have been number 61, but because he was subjected to that special healing process when they hung him up on the tree, therefore he became healed, and he's not included in the number 60. The Kaimi ben Afshai, I fulfilled in myself the pasuk in Koheles, Chachma Techaya Baleh, that if you know a Dvar Chachma, you can live. So I achieved my own health as a result of this chachma, that they knew exactly what method to use to heal him. The Mishnah says, Girsha Muteres, she's allowed to marry another man, and we're not afraid that she's an Akara. And the Gemara is Medayik, Sheni in, Shlishi lo. She's only allowed to marry a second husband if she doesn't have children after 10 years with the second husband, then she's not allowed to marry a third husband. Mastis and Mani Rebbe. And now we get to the gigantic machlokas about chazaka. This is a world-class sugya. Rebbe's shita is that 2 times is enough to create a chazaka. The Sanya we learned in a Bryce as far as the mila of a ben ches yomim, mala rishon umes, sheni umes, Rebbe shita shlisha lo timo. We will not implement circumcision on the third baby because there's already a chazaka that was established after twice. I would call this hemophilia. It's a blood disease. There's no chazaka in twice, but revi lo tamul. If a third child will die from mila in that family, then we know that there's an illness and we will not circumcise the 4th child. We have another brisa that has it in the opposite way. It's Reb Shimon Gamliel holds that 2 times is enough for chazaka, and Rebbe requires 3 times. And the Gemara says, "Hey minayu achrinisa." Which of these brisas was the later brisa? And we have a principle that we have a stira between 2 brisas will be somech on the authenticity of the later brisa. So if you want to clarify what was the opinion of Rebbe and what was the opinion of Reb Shimon Gamliel, we have to try to figure out which was the last brisa. And generally speaking, the last brisa records the final opinions because Tanoim, like all Chacham, go through different changes. They often rescind their original position. So now the Gemara is trying to figure out which is the last brisa and is the accurate, reliable transmission. The Omer Abchia bar Ab Omer Reb Yochanan Ma'isa be'arba achios b'tzipor 4 sisters that lived in Tzipori. Shemola Rishona Umeis. So the first sister had a boy and they circumcised the baby and he died. V'chein shnia umes, shlishis umes. Then when the 4th sister had a boy, Revius, Basa Lifnei Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, they came in front of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel to ask what to do with the 4th sister. Amalal Timoli, don't circumcise your son. So we see that Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, who holds, like we saw in the first brisa, that 3 creates a chazaka. And therefore, he paskin that for the 4th sister, she should not have a bris milah. Okay, so then let's just summarize. It comes out that Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is the one who says that only after 3 repetitions, then we've established a chazaka. And on the 4th round, there's no milah. And therefore, we should conclude that Rebbe is the one who holds it after 2 times there's a chazaka. And that's the Torah here of Rabbi Chia bar Ab in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So the Gemara objects. How can you prove anything about the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, namely that a chazaka only evolves after 3 times, from the fact that the 4th sister was told and ruled by Rabbi Shimon Gamliel not to go through Milah Dilma, perhaps I Asya Shlishis, we don't know that the 3rd sister came to ask the question to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. According to the record of this brisa, After the fourth sister had a boy, then she, the fourth sister, came to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel to ask what to do. But Nami Avi Omala had the third sister come, he would have told her not to do Milah. And it could be therefore possible that Rabbi Shimon Gamliel holds it after twice there's a chazak. And the Gemara answers, Im Kain, if you're correct that the third sister did not ask the question, and that's why she didn't get a psak, my asaduse de Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Why did Rabbi Chia bar Abba testify about this ma'aser? The story that he's telling doesn't have any chidush. We don't know what the law is, because it happened to be that the third sister never showed up to ask the question. But from the fact that Rabbi Chia bar Abba wanted to testify to this effect, it's obvious that he wanted to teach us that according to the opinion of Shimon Gamliel, only after 3 times is there a chazak. The chazak emerges after 3, and therefore it's only relevant to the fourth sister. And this is against Rebbe, who says that after twice you establish the chazak. So the Gemara asks for Dilma Haka Mashmal, and maybe what Rabbi Chia bar Abba wanted to tell us is the Achios Mechazkos, that one sister generates a chazaka on the other sister. See, I'm a little confused about one point. Why is it dafka sisters? Why can't it be brothers or sisters and brothers, any combination of the two?
Because there's a more likely genetic thing. I don't know. But that could apply to brothers also. Yeah, it could apply to brothers also, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just more because they're the mothers.
He writes here in the Masifta, Ein chazak nikvas rak al yedei bonim. In the Havamina, we would have thought shall osa ha'em bilvad, they're children from the same mother. Let's just explain the Havamina. That's not going to really help us for our question. Ela afim beisu b'neim shel sholosh achios machmas mila gam ke nikvas chazaka shebnei osa mishpacha einam yecholim lachzik atzmam achar mila. They can't survive mila. So at the end of the day, the bottom line is we really don't know conclusively what's the opinion of Rebbe and what's the opinion of Shimon Gamliel. Omar Rav, hashta di amrit achios mechazkos. Now that we say that a chazaka is established through the sisters and not through the brothers, no. Now that we've established the chazaka comes through sisters, not only through the same mother, but even different mothers who are sisters, is therefore Yisa Adam Isha, Lomi Mishpachas Nichvin, the Lomi Mishpachas Mitzoron. So we have various machlos here. One is called Nichvin. I guess Nichvin means that she'll give birth to children who are very ill and they won't be able to survive. He gives another pshat in the word nichvin. They're somehow, they can't maintain their balance because of this holy. I think, what's this called? You know what I'm talking about? When the earth spins around. It's not epilepsy. I to remember it. What's it called?
When you're dizzy?
It's a kind of dizziness, yeah, but it's a very severe dizziness. Like you really.
Yeah, I don't know the name of that. There is something where you're.
There's a name to that disease. It just slips my mind right now because I'm a little bit dizzy. So that's then Mitzoraim, where the children are lepers, and these are all genetic diseases. So you establish chazaka in the mishpacha, and if you marry some woman from that mishpacha, we're afraid that the children of that woman will also likewise fall sick to the same diseases. And who did chazek tlosa zimni? If you see in the family that 3 times the children had this machla, or these machlas. So Gemara asks, my Havila, how do we paskin in Chazaka? What establishes Chazaka? Is it twice or three times? Ki Asar Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef Omar Uvda Havi Kamed Rav Yochanan. An actual case happened in front of Rav Yochanan, and the question was asked to Rav Yochanan, B'knishta Demon in the Beis Knesset of Ma'on, B'yom HaKippurim Shechalios B'Shabbos. It was both Yom Kippur and Shabbos. Umola Rishona Umes. The first sister lost the child through Mila. Shnia Umes. Vashlish is Baal Lefana. Now it's a case where the third sister actually asks the Rav, Amar La Lechi Umuli. So since it only happened twice, there's no chazaka, and go ahead and implement Mila on the third sister's son. And this was Yom HaKippurim and Shabbos. So you see that twice is not enough to establish chazaka, you need thrice. Amalei Abaye turns to Rabbi Yitzchak, Chazi de Kasharis Isura. He says, as a result of this story that you're telling in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, you're being matir isurim. Because let's assume that a chazaka is established after two times, then you would not be allowed to circumcise the third child of the third sister because he might die. And that's called a mila shelo bizmana, which is not docha Shabbos or Yom Kippur. So first and foremost, Abai says to Rabbi Yitzchak, if you're basing yourself on this story of Rabbi Yochanan, you're being matir the Isur of Shabbos and Isur Yom Kippur by allowing the third Mila to take place, which in fact, it's also to be mal the third Mila. And not only is it a problem of Shabbos and Yom Kippur, but it's also a problem of Sakanta, of Sakonis Nefashos. And even though Abai objected to Rabbi Yitzchak, nevertheless, he himself, Abai, Samach Alei Abai. Abai relied on Rabbi Yitzchak in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, who would allow the third child to have Mila, meaning that two times is not enough to establish Chazaka. And we're not going to assume that that which happened twice is accidental. The Azal Nisabe Lechuma. And Abai got married to a woman by the name of Chuma. Brata the Isi Bereid Rab Yitzchak Bereid Rab Yehuda. And he married a woman whose name was Brata, who was already previously married. Dinisabe, she was already married in the past to a man by the name of Rachva de Pumbedisa, who's Shachiv, after he died. And Rabbi Yitzchak Brei de Rabba Barbachana married her. So the same Brata was married, number one, to Rachva, number two, to Rabbi Yitzchak. Both Rachva and Rabbi Yitzchak died. The Nasbehu and Abaye married this woman Brata. Ushchiv. And ultimately Abaye died. So you see that Abaye permitted himself, he gave himself license to marry this Brata, who had been married twice before and had lost two husbands. But nevertheless, Abaye was relying on Rav Yitzchak's transmission that two times is not enough to be Kovei Chazak. Omar Ravu mi ika di ovid uvda benafshe ki hai. Is it so that a person would put his life into danger in that way? It was Abai himself who stated Ha'iu diomar avin dismacha. When Avin said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan is Rebbe, and we rely on him, that this is what he heard from Rabbi Yochanan, but Yitzchak Sumka, but Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef, when he says something in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, La Bar Samcha, you cannot rely upon him. His transmission is not reliable. And the reason for this is Avin Yeshna B'Chazara. Avin would wait around in the presence of his Rebbe, Rabbi Yochanan, and review the lesson. And if Rabbi Yochanan would review the same halacha, he would be able to see whether Rabbi Yochanan changed his mind or not. This was his final opinion. So therefore, you can rely on Avin. He knew whether or not Rabbi Yochanan rescinded and changed his mind about his original opinion. But Yitzchak Sumka, Eina B'Chazara, he wouldn't wait around and linger in the presence of Rabbi Yochanan after the shir. And it's very possible that whatever he heard was Rabbi Yochanan's original first opinion. And Yitzchak Sumka didn't know that Rabbi Yochanan changed his mind, and he continued to transmit the original position of Rabbi Yochanan, even though Rabbi Yochanan changed his mind and rejected his original opinion. And furthermore, another reason why we shouldn't rely on this psak of Rabbi Yochanan as it was quoted in the story transmitted by Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Emar de pligi le'inyan mila v'nesuin mi pligi. It's possible that Rebbe and Rav Shimon Gamliel argued about mila in the case where two sisters, each one lost a child to mila. And the machlokas is whether we can implement circumcision for the third sister. But in the case of marriage, can you marry a woman whose two husbands died? Me pligi. We don't find a machlokas about that. What does that mean? It means that I think I don't know, I'm just taking a guess here. He means that everyone would agree that after she loses two husbands, she has a chazak. Does Rashi anything on this? Just him. I don't see any Rashi on this. The two possibilities, either Gemara is saying that in this case, everybody agrees we'll give her a third chance, or everybody agrees that two is enough to establish chazak. In any event, the Gemara rejects this. And the Gemara says, in fact, the same machlokas that we see by Mila, the identical machlokas we see codified in the case of marriage. Tanya, Nises l'rishon v'mes, l'sheni v'mes, l'shlishi lo tinase divrei Rebbe, twice sets a chazaka. Reb Shimon Gamliel omer, l'shlishi tinase, l'revi lo tinase. Only three times sets a chazaka. So we see the machlokas is not limited to Mila, but applies to Nisuin as well. Right. And the Gemara now is going to analyze why is it that a woman who has a chazaka that her husbands die, you're not allowed to marry her. Bishlei Magabi Mila, I understand. Ika Mishpacha de Rafi Damya. We have a family that has blood diseases that are genetic diseases. Right? That's what the whole field of hematology is about this. That the blood is not circulating properly through the body. And therefore, if they get injured, they can lose their lives. They're not able of what? What's it called? not coagulating. What's it called when the blood?
Like blood thinners, or
No, when the blood doesn't, what happens when you get a maca is after a while the blood, coagulates. It becomes a scab, and it protects. There's a word for that. Okay. In any event, we can understand very well that this family is lacking that element in the blood that would protect them.
blood clot.
Right. There's a
clotting.
clotting that's normal, and in the case of blood disease, it's not clotting properly.
Right.
The ika mishpacha to commit dama. Right. It has, I guess, a blood that's sort of absorbed within the Evarim, and it doesn't come out. And therefore, if you see that after the milah of a number of members of that family that died, that creates a chazaka. El nesu in my timer. Why should we assume that because she was married to two different people who died, therefore the third guy might die if he marries her? What is the reason that caused the death of these two husbands? That as a result, we're going to say, don't marry this woman. The Gemara clarifies, Omer le Rav Mordechai le Rav Ashi, Hachi Omer Avimi Me'agrona Mishmei Rav Huna, Mayon Goren. I guess it has something to do with the way the blood comes out of her body. Some sort of a defect in the Machzor Hadam.
Right.
I'm not sure why that Mayon would cause the death of her husband. See, this is the case where I need art scroll. I don't have art scroll, but I'm sure there'll be a note here in art scroll.
Yeah, they say here that it could be some vaginal disease that causes the other person to die.
You mean like gonorrhea or something like that?
Yeah.
Oh, you have the art scroll?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Gee, if you have the art scroll, so let me ask you, what is kamit dama? Does he say the blood thins and it doesn't clot? Is that what he says?
1 second.
Just a one line above, like.
Blood thick. Blood is thick. That's all it says. Blood is thick. Does not clot properly. Yeah, it does not clot properly. What we said.
Because it's thick. That's counterintuitive. Okay.
I know.
I'll accept that. But again, if you already have the art scroll, so what else did I get stuck on before? Just 1 second. Oh, yeah. Does he ask the question perhaps in one of the notes about why this is all about sisters?
No, yeah, I looked for that. No.
He doesn't have anything on that.
No. Just as family members. It could be family.
Right. We saw the family.
It doesn't say specifically why sisters, not brothers. It's dealing with family. It could be epilepsy in a family or something like that.
Oh, he translates nichvin as epilepsy?
Oh, where's nichvin?
Nichvin. Right. Omar Rava, lo yisa adam isha lo mi mishpachas nichvin. Because we wanted to translate nichvin as...
he translates epilepsy.
Epilepsy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think also in epilepsy, when you have an epileptic fit, I think you lose your balance. But there's another word that I'm looking for. I thought maybe Artsko would say it. Right. Give me a second. I'm going to ask my wife. She'll know.
Okay.
1 second. We're almost finished, Ira.
Okay.
All right. What's that disease cause? Like, all of a sudden you lose your balance, like things start spinning. Vertigo. Vertigo.
That's a vertigo, right?
Vertigo.
Okay, yeah.
If I don't hear a word for about 30 days, I forget it. Vertigo. Okay. So let's see if we can finish up now.
Yeah.
Rav Ashi Omer Mazel Gorim. Right? She says it's like a bad mazel that causes the death of her husband. Therefore, you're not allowed to marry. My Beinai, what's the difference between Rav Mordechai, which is called Mayon Gorim, and Rav Ashi, which is called Mazel Gorim? Ika beinayu the ersa umis. Let's say they didn't consummate their marriage. It was only after erison and the husband died. So if it's mazel goring, that could be a goring. But you can't say that mayan is goring because they never had an intercourse. Inami, another nafkamina would be, did nafal mi dikla. Let's say a person who is married climbed up a tree dangerously, umis, and he fell from the tree and he died. We're not going to say that mayna gorim lemisa, that because of a mayan he died. We know why he died. We can identify the cause of his death. So you can't blame it on mayan, but you could blame it on mazel. So in the case of mayan gorim, this woman would be allowed to get married another time. But according to the Mandiomer Rav Ashi, who says mazel gorim, she would not. It would be prohibited to marry such a woman, either after 2 or 3, depending on Machlokas Rebbe and Reb Shimon Gamliel. Amalei Rav Yosef Brei the Rav L'Rava Boy Minei Rav Yosef. I asked this question to Rav Yosef Halacha Kerebi. Do we paskin that a chazaka is established with twice? Amali in yes. Another time I asked him the same question, but I formulated it in a different way. I asked him Halacha Reb Shimon Gamliel that chazaka is only in 3 times. Amali in. And again, he said yes. Now, it can't be that halacha is like both. So, achuche achiv bi. I figured he's like making fun of me. He's like playing games with me. Amalei, so Rava responds to Rav Yosef, lo, this is not a joke that Rav Yosef is making a fool out of you, but rather stamihi. There are a number of different mishnayos that are formulated stama without a name. They're anonymous mishnayos. And some of those mishnayos seem to reflect the sheep of Rebbe, that 2 times makes a chazaka. Other mishnayos, which are stam mishnayos, seem to reflect the opinion of Rav Shimon Gamliel that only 3 times creates a chazaka. So basically, Rav Yosef was saying to Rava that you can't give an absolute psak over here. It really depends upon the context. In certain contexts, the halacha would be like Rebbe, and others like Rav Shimon Gamliel. And therefore, Pashat Lach, Rav Yosef gave you 2 different answers. When you asked him about Nisuin, if a woman's been married to 2 different men and they both died, then the halacha, there's a stam mishnah like Rebbe, and the chazaka that she kills her husband, so to speak, is established after twice. The Malkios, and so too, a person who got Malchus, and again, a second time he gets Malchus, Kirebi, the halacha is that 2 times is Koveh Chazaka. So it means that on the first 2 times, you might have thought that he couldn't overcome his Yitzhar, I guess his tremendous lust or desire. But if it happens a 3rd time, then we know retroactively that he's a Rasha already on the first 2 times. And that has to do with another halacha, which is not mentioned here in the Gemara, called Machnisin Oso L'Kipa, that we don't put him to death for these Averos, but we let him die a slow death. But Vestos, when a woman sees in her cycle of Dam on a certain day of the month, or in a Haflaga, she always sees 30 days or 25 days after the previous Re'iyah. In such a case, we're going to pass like Reb Shimon Gamliel that she doesn't establish a Veses in less than 3 occasions. V'chein, L'gavi Shara Muad, that the show is Nogea 3 times. He becomes a Muad and the Bailam after Teinezik Shalim. That's only after the 3rd time, the 3rd Negicha, Reb Shimon Gamliel. Which means that nothing less than 3 times will be Koveh the Chazak. So a woman cannot be Kovas Vest unless she sees it 3 times. And she doesn't have to be Choshesh that she'll see on the 3rd round until she gets to the 4th round. And then Shar, that was Nogeach, will pay Nezik Shalem only when he gets to the fourth Negicha, because after the third Negicha, he has established his pattern as a Shor Nadchan.
Right.
So therefore, Rav Yosef's psak will always be relative to the Stam Mishnah. If it's a Stam Mishnah in this particular context, then we pass like Rebbe, for example, by Nesuin, if she killed two husbands. If on the other hand, there's a Stam Mishnah that requires 3 times, like in Veses or Sharamud, that's halacha Rav Shimon Gamliel. We're always going to pass in like Stam Mishnah. So the Gemara says, Nesuin had Amoron. Our Mishnah says that she didn't give birth after 10 years. Then he marries a second wife, only a second wife, but not a third wife. So that's a psak like Rebbe, that after twice, you establish chazaka. Malkius, the Snan, or Mishnah Sanhedrin Pei Aleph, Misha Laka Vishana. He got Malkius twice for the same Avera. And Rashi points out it's an Avera Shechayev Oleh Kares. He becomes Muhsak Birasha. And if he violates this Avera third time, then we don't give him Malchus, but rather we put him to death. Bezdin Konsen also Lekipa. Umachilin also Siorin. This is a pretty painful death here. I should take Kreson of Kas, and he dies. So that Mishnah reflects the sheet of Rebbe, that a person who violates an Aver twice is already Huchzak to be a Rasha. And Vestos, how do we know that we pass to Rav Shimon Gamliel that only 3? It's not because we have a Mishnah Nid on Daf Samach Gimel Amid Beis. Eino Isha Kovas Vesta here on the top of Samach Hey. Ad shetikve'enu shalosh piyamim. And that's a Stam Mishnah, like Rav Shimon Gamliel, that a chazaka is only established after 3 times. Okay, then this is where we'll stop.
Okay. All right, shkoyach. Very nice.
Thank you so much, Chodesh Tov.
All right.
Have a good Chodesh.
Yeah, you too. Okay.
Tomorrow I'm giving a Daf Yomi shir in Toronto.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Bobby said that the Maggid Shir is not able to give the shir tomorrow. So at 1:00 on my clock, I'll be giving the Zoom shir, the Daf Yomi shir.
Okay,
That's so cute.
Nice. That's cute. Okay.
Regards.